assistance, ensuring that public resources are used efficiently, transparently, and for the benefit of Kenyans. In Seychelles, the African Development Bank support for constitutional reforms has required all sovereign borrowings to receive parliamentary approval. This intervention contributed significantly to reducing Seychelles' debt to GDP ratio from over 100% in 2008 to below 52% in 2022. This also continues to improve the country's sovereign rating, credit rating, reducing borrowing costs, reaffirming that constitutional safeguards are not theoretical ideals, they deliver practical economic outcomes. In Botswana, fiscal management reforms combined with constitutional safeguards supported by the bank have entrenched macroeconomic stability and positioned Botswana today to be one of Africa's most transparent and most financially stable economies. Similarly, in Rwanda, your next door neighbor, the bank backed reforms in public finance oversight, transparent public reporting on financing and debt, integrity-enhanced governance frameworks have all strengthened fiscal discipline, boosted investor confidence, and positioned the country as a credible investment destination. Let me turn to the third issue I want to address, which is on strengthening commercial courts to complement public service or public financial reforms. The African Development Bank recognizes that public finance reforms must be complemented by strong legal and judicial institutions to enforce transparency, protect investor rights, and uphold the rule of law. Across the continent, the bank has invested extensively in strengthening the judiciary to complement public finance reforms. And these are not abstract investments, they are tangible, they are measurable, and they are transformative. And let me cite a few examples. In Rwanda, the bank's support for specialized commercial courts reduced dispute resolution times from over 500 days in 2009 to just 230 days in 2022. These helped them to unlock over $2 billion of foreign direct investment within that particular time period. In Cote d'Ivoire, where we are based, the modernization of commercial courts backed by the bank reduced average time taken to resolve commercial disputes by 40% between 2014 and 2021. And this judicial reform has contributed to sustain annual foreign direct investment inflows of over $1 billion from 2017 to 2021 that we actually did that. In Malawi, the establishment of a commercial division in the High Court under the bank-supported Malawi Competitiveness Growth Support Program reduced commercial dispute resolution times by approximately 35%, and improved its rating in terms of the enforcement of contracts from 132nd position to 109th position. In Tunisia, the bank's support for the Competitiveness Support Program, which we have with Tunisia, led to a 25% reduction in average time required to resolve commercial disputes. And of course, it improved the contract enforcement ranking of Tunisia. In Guinea, similar things were done to improve the transparency and efficiency in commercial dispute resolution, reducing case durations by over 25% over 5 years and fostering increased domestic investment. In Ghana, which is close by to where I'm from, the big institutional and a practical mix, countries are better positioned to attract investment, support growth, and achieve inclusive development. In essence, public finance, when aligned with constitutional principles and the rule of law, becomes not just a means of managing national debt or budgets, it becomes the foundation for economic sovereignty and sustainable development all across the continent. Let me shift to the fourth issue that I want to discuss with you. Parliamentary oversight, simply about disbursing to development financing. Public finance, I want to be very clear, without parliamentary oversight is completely undemocratic and non-sustainable. Democratic scrutiny does not delay development. It protects development. Parliamentary approval is not an obstacle. It is a safeguard that ensures that every dollar borrowed serves the public good, not private interest. By placing legal oversight at the center of our financing architecture, the African Development Bank affirms that public resources must be governed by a public will. This, ladies and gentlemen, is not just about the process, it is about justice itself. Because every financing instrument, every loan, every grant is not just a number, it is a promise. And that promise must be made before the people, through the institutions they elect to represent them, not through the fiat of any single individual. Let me turn to strengthening judicial infrastructure. A national legal system serves as its institutional backbone that ensures constitutionalism and the rule of law, safeguarding public resources, protecting the rights of citizens, creating the certainty and the predictability upon which all economic activity depends. An independent judiciary, underpinned by constitutional safeguards and protected by clear separation of powers, ensures that the management of public finances is not left to unchecked discretion, but is bound by clear legal frameworks and subjected to impartial oversight. Where judicial independence is compromised, courts become vulnerable to political influence. Fiscal rules are bypassed, public borrowing escapes scrutiny, and public confidence collapses. That is why all across Africa, the African Development Bank has helped to place legal and judicial reforms at the center of all of our work on governance and public financial support. This is not just a policy on paper, it is impact in motion. Let me cite a few examples to make this point. In Liberia, after years of civil conflict, the African Development Bank helped to restore and equip commercial court infrastructure, digitize court systems, train judges in public finance and contract law, restoring the credibility of legal institutions and supporting fiscal oversight. In the Gambia, the bank supported reforms, modernized judicial operations and public financial management, increasing development budget execution significantly by 15%. In Mali, despite ongoing fragility, the bank helped to deploy mobile courts, train legal officers to resolve over 12,000 disputes. Many of course are related to land and other forms of fiscal issues that preserves the livelihoods and of course reduces conflict. In South Tome and Principe, a very small country, we provided technical support for the enactment of new arbitration laws aligned with international best practices, unlocking renewed investor interest in fisheries, tourism, ensuring dispute resolution frameworks. For your neighbor here in South Sudan, we supported the judicial and the commercial and judicial laws were drafted and adopted with our support, while over 150 judges have been trained, laying for them a strong foundation for investor trust, legal certainty in one of Africa's newest nations. And in Togo, the African Development Bank support contract enforcement time has dropped by 25% due to reforms in the judicial digitalization, while boosting confidence of local businesses and foreign investors. Now let me turn to the last point that I want to make: improving access to justice. One cannot speak meaningfully about constitutionalism, the rule of law, and investment in Africa without addressing the foundational issue of access to justice and fair compensation. These are the very conditions that foster public trust and build confidence of investors to commit capital. When justice is accessible, compensation is fair, development becomes inclusive, governance and legitimacy, economic growth becomes truly sustainable. At the African Development Bank, we hold a simple but profound conviction. Development must be anchored in fairness, justice, and the protection of human dignity. Infrastructure and investment alone are not enough. We must ensure that every person impacted by our projects is treated with equity, dignity, and respect. And that is why the African Development Bank enforces a compensation policy that goes beyond formal land ownership. All across Africa, ladies and gentlemen, countless communities live and work on land under customary law or tenure. Land not reflected in formal registries, but it's land upon which their entire livelihoods depend. The bank's position on this is very, very clear, and it is unequivocal. Whether or not a community holds a title deed, they are entitled to just and fair compensation. This is not theoretical. Right here in Kenya, during the construction of vital roads and all these projects that I've mentioned to you, and I can just discuss a few of them before I proceed. Look, the bank has done a lot of projects that have affected people and for which we actually work with the government well to do it. I mentioned to you the Tika Road. You have the road that is here, Bagamayo, that goes also Horogoro all the way to Malindi. You have the Menandai Park project. You have the Lake Turkana Park project. You have the last mile connectivity project, which actually connects poor people, small households, small businesses to the grid. And when we started that under President Kenyatta, also with President Ruto, you know, I think your Minister of Energy was a guy called Qatar, I think. Somebody, huh? Qatar, yeah. Yeah, Charles Qatar, yeah. And we went to the Rift Valley to see one of these projects. Through that project, the last mile connectivity project, the percentage of Kenyans that were connected to electricity went from 41% to over 74%. And in numbers, that's about 2.4 million to about 9.7 million people. But I want to talk to you about my experience with Cabinet Secretary Kitcher. Yeah, Kitcher. So essentially the way it worked was we paid for small households, poor households, for the cost of connecting themselves to the grid. So the problem was not the grid, it's the connection to the grid. It's what self-select themselves away from it because they can't pay. And so we paid for it. So I went to one of the villages with Minister Keter, Cabinet Secretary Keter, and we were walking there. And my wife's name is Grace. Okay. That's my Grace. And in fact, I can't do anything live without Grace. Both Graces, that up and before at home. Amazing Grace, I guess. But as we were walking there, the lady in front of us, her name is Grace. Not my Grace, but the grace of that village, I guess. And Minister, Cabinet Secretary Keter was asking, do you know that it's the African Development Bank that finances this project? And by the way, I was talking to the President of Yambo, and also they were talking about the Tika Road, and people thought it was done by the Chinese, so it was financed by the African Development Bank. The roads that come here, you came through here, it's all financed by the African Development Bank. The outer ring road is financed by the African Development Bank. The Tagway, the water supply project, is done by the African Development Bank. The Kenyan urban water treatment project is funded by the African Development Bank. And the list goes on. But we don't put our billboards on things. But I was talking to, I got an advice, free legal advice from Mohammed, was one of the lawyers that I should start putting that. No, actually, yeah, right here. What's the name, sir? Yeah, the chairman of the Senate Council gave me free legal advice that to be advertising on our behalf many of this project. But anyway, we were going, and Kenyatta asked, "Do you know that it's the African Development Bank that I financed this project?" She says, "That was great. I do not know the African Development Bank." And said, "Do you know that the president of African Development Bank, Adesina, is the one that made this possible?" Say, "I do not know Adesina. All I know is that we once were in darkness and now we have light." And that's what development really is about the people when they can say that. So people recognize the guy important behind that. So in Uganda, and by the way, about compensation, I think it's very, I was just in Adesina, and I was talking to some of the Lions friends here. They are building Bishop 2 Airport, which we have been mandatorily arranged for $8 billion, raising $8 billion for them. That airport will have 60,000 million passengers per year. By 22nd phase, it will go to 110 million passengers per year. Larger than many airports. In fact, it will be one of the largest airports and city in Africa, that we're talking about. So when you go to that kind of a project, sitting on 4,000 hectares, you have to displace people, right? But commercial Ethiopian Airlines did, and the government did an incredible thing. They actually took care of all the 2,800 households well ahead of time. And guess what they did? They gave every household a villa. And then they gave them irrigation systems, mechanized systems, agro-processing zones, and Ethiopia Airlines put in $350 million to support their livelihoods. That's how we should be doing things. So of course, I said to them that these are no longer project-affected people. These are project-supported people. So some people will be asking them, how come the cadastral survey left out, I want a villa too, so put me in this project. And that's the kind of thing that we want to see. In Uganda, through our support, informal urban settlers affected by development projects, they receive resettlement support, legal protection, and means to rebuild their lives. In Cote d'Ivoire, displaced farmers were compensated not just for their land, but for future income losses and supported with access to other forms of livelihood. These, dear friends, are tangible demonstrations of the rule of law in action, where fairness is not just promised, but delivered. But compensation alone is not enough. Access to justice itself is a fundamental right. That's why the African Development Bank invests in modernizing court registries, digitizing legal frameworks, expanding digital literacy through online platforms and outreach, ensuring that even the most marginalized communities understand and can claim their rights. In parallel, they advocate for the provision and the institutionalization of pro bono services in national bar associations. Justice must never be a privilege. It must be a guarantee for all. Through grievances redress systems embedded in our projects, we are seeing Tanzania, Ethiopia, and others ensure that individuals that are facing all manner of challenges, they can file their complaints, they can do that timely with independent mediation. These systems allow justice to be delivered not in theory, but in real time, at the community level, with procedural integrity and respect for human dignity. This integrated approach, fair compensation, accessible legal systems, digitized law, legal aid, robust governance of grievance systems bring the principles of constitutionalism and the rule of law into the everyday lives of African citizens. It transforms development from a top-down transaction into a participatory and accountable process. One area, as I close, that is critical for social justice and participation is improving land ownership laws to give farmers full title deeds for their lands that can act as collateral to access finance. And most importantly, laws should be changed to ensure that women have secure property rights all across Africa. No nation can develop without its women. And no bird can fly in one way. It's not just about what's right, it's about equity, fairness, and justice. Because we know this truth. Justice is not a byproduct of development. It is the foundation of development. To conclude, distinguished learned friends, I guess I can call myself a learned friend because I'm your friend. And I hope I'm learned. In this hall today, right before me, are the guardians of Kenya's promise, the stewards of Africa's destiny, courts and contracts, public finance and governance, digital trust, environmental and social governance, justice and economic development. These are living systems that depend on you, your judgment, your voice, your integrity, and daily commitment to uphold the law and defend the public good. We must collectively strengthen constitutionalism, insist on accountability in the use of public funds, and strengthen the legal system and the judiciary. We must champion the environment, sustainability and governance principles, ensure that courts have suitable quality infrastructure, digitize our courts, build digital trust, and reform and uphold the ethics of the legal profession. As we do this, dear friends, while strengthening a just, fair, and independent and incorruptible judiciary, the benefits for societies will be immense across the continent. Africa will attract the capital that it needs. Businesses will flourish in trust. Justice will cease to be a privilege and become a right delivered to all. And development will no longer be a distant promise, but a daily reality in the lives of people. And this will be true not only for Kenya, but for all of Africa. When Africa stands for the rule of law, the world will stand with Africa. Let us make a choice that history will record and that generations will remember. Kenya is watching. Africa is waiting. The future is calling. And it is you, the lawyers, the judges, and the arbitrators who must answer that particular call. And I want to say that if you look at life itself, God has given us oxygen for a given period of time. Whether you like it or not, that oxygen will come to them. But I do hope that by doing the right things, that we will have the confidence the day that our own oxygen expires and we stand before a different court, and that is a court in heaven. Regardless of where you are, there will be a judgment that we can do so, that we have done the right thing. We have issued judgments not just in favor of the rich, and that we have not forgotten the poor, and that we have done what is right before God and before man in good conscience. That will be the kind of court to be, because you can never be sent to jail. Thank you very much. It's so nice to be here.